Welcome to The Savvy Sauce, where we have practical chats for intentional living. I'm your host, Laura Duggar, and I'm so glad you're here. Today's message is not intended for little ears. We'll be discussing some adult themes, and I want you to be aware before you listen to this message. I am so excited to introduce you to a company that I personally work with. Our sponsor for today's episode is Belay. Belay matches busy leaders like you with virtual assistants, accounting professionals, and more so that you can focus on what matters most. They also have a special offer just for you, but time is short, so you only have until the end of June 2025 to claim your offer. Make sure you text the word SAVVY, S-A-V-V-Y, to 55123 to claim it now. Coming in at number 9 for this Top 10 series is a helpful conversation with author, counselor, and former pastor, Dave Carter. We're going to discuss this very important topic so that we can proactively protect our marriages. Here's our chat. Welcome back to The Savvy Sauce, Dave.
Looking forward to this. We had a good time the first time around. Trust God that we'll have same this.
Absolutely. Well, can you just start us off by sharing a recap of who you are and what you do?
Sure. I went back to grad school after seminary and got a psych degree out of Wayne State, licensed there, and came out here to California, got a marriage and family therapy license. I've been a pastor all my life, worked in churches for over 50 years, ran counseling programs, support groups, 12-step groups, recovery groups, all kinds of stuff. I've loved it.
And you have spent your career helping people who have experienced marital unfaithfulness.
Yeah.
Some would say that a physical affair is worse than an emotional affair. So I'd love to hear your perspective. Would you agree with that?
Well, parts of it I would, parts I wouldn't. I have worked with couples who have never been sexually involved in an affair with anybody, but who have had a series of, and in one case, a singular relationship that they could not let go of. It was not erotic. It never involved touching, kissing, nothing. But they just wouldn't let go of it. They couldn't let go of it. Or, in some of the cases, as it approached any kind of erotic expression, they ran and started another one. So there is a lot of mood alteration and infatuation in the chase. Always in that. And there are people in our culture especially who move from a relationship to relationship to relationship, multiple marriages. Liz Taylor had 8 of them. They're just hungry for somebody to fix them and finish this off in their life. So I think non-sexual emotional attachment can be every bit as strong as when it's with sexual activity. But most of us would feel that sexual betrayal is a betrayal of a commitment. Unto you only do I commit myself. At least initially, I don't think the felt betrayal is as strong in an emotional attachment as it is in a sexual attachment.
And I wonder if an emotional affair is just very dangerous because that may be easier for someone to justify.
Oh, absolutely. That is what happens. Sure. Well, we're just friends. Well, Shirley Glass, PhD, great gal, she wrote a book called Not Just Friends. And it was really well received in both Christian and secular communities. She's a wonderful writer. Unfortunately, Shirley had breast cancer and has since departed. But that kind of friendship, what we say about that is it robs the marriage and feeds the friendship. Everything the individual does who has that kind of a relationship is robbing the marriage and feeding the friendship.
Well, Dave, in one of your books, you mentioned that there are different types of extramarital affairs. So can you give us some examples and also share what is at the root of each one?
Okay, well, we start with the simplest one, I suppose, the one-night stand. Many times it's a singular experience on a weekend or at a training conference or somebody where you meet someone like that. Almost always involves alcohol. Many times it's spontaneous. You don't even know the person. You're in this training or at this conference or whatever together, and you get put in a small group or a breakout group or something, and you just continue to build the friendship real quickly, and with the alcohol and eating out together and secrecy and everything else, it's pretty easy in this culture. And remember too, Laura, today women can be as aggressive in this area as men can be. They actually, in one recent study of singles in America, it was on a TED Talk, women reported going after married men at even higher rates than single men went after married women. But the thought they agreed on together was, if you made this person happy, maybe you could make me happy too. So it's a wild west out there anymore. It'll be interesting to see what happens after everything calms down a bit and travel resumes and that kind of thing. So class 2 is an emotionally saturated relationship. You're very addicted, so to speak, to the individual. You just feel like you've lost your best friend if you lose this person, or if you're asked to give up this person. You can't stay away from them. This is the couple that sneaks off and lies and meets halfway across the United States, or sets up a purchasing conference or something where they can see this person. I've seen this so bad where one guy actually brought his girlfriend to a conference in Vegas, had the whole family on one floor in a lovely suite, and had her on another floor in a private suite. So they just need this person. Now, what happens eventually in this, after about 18, 20 months, is they're worn out, emotionally exhausted, and they oftentimes want to get out of it, and they can't. They don't know what to do. It's on again, off again. They want to run back to the wife, and then they don't like that, and they go back to the girlfriend, and they can't decide who they want to be with. And at that point in time, if they're a professional person, they're really at risk for malpractice, whatever they do, because they're exhausted. They just can't decide. So one of the things in the therapy process is they cannot see the girlfriend or the boyfriend during the entire 90 or 120 days that they see me. So there are really 4 people in my office when we start counseling: me, the wife, the husband, and the girlfriend or boyfriend. And I have an empty chair in my office with that idea in mind. They're sitting there, I say. So the third class is what we often call sexual addiction today. Multiple partners, very brief relationships, because the thrill and the mood alteration comes in 2 parts: the thrill of the chase and the orgasm. And so that's all they're interested in. In that situation, they're really like a binge drinker. So they drink for the elevated mood that they can get out of it. And that's what they're in it for. They're in it for the person at all. Many times this starts off with a molest history or a seduction experience with, like, a little guy maybe in 4th grade, and he's got a 6th grade girl, or maybe a 7th, 8th grade girl babysitter. And he get involved. And so that's one of those common histories. Or maybe his dad has an affair or two, and mom is so angry at dad, she stays married to him, but she's going to raise her little man so he doesn't treat women like his dad treated her. So many times that's the start of the narcissistic personality in a lot of males. And many times these people are chronic liars, and they've learned to lie and tell people whatever they think they want to hear. And part of the thrill is to lie and not get caught, and to see it work, and people actually believe the lie I told them. One of my favorite movies is Catch Me If You Can. That's the guy that became the counterfeiter that brought down the airlines, Pan Am, for cashing all those paychecks all those years. It was as a pilot, and he never flew. So anyway, that's the third class. And this is not about the marriage. This has nothing to do with the spouse. The fourth class, what we call add-on. Pretty solid marriage, good relationship, good histories, high-level satisfaction across the history for the most part. But there's one component that's really missing, or that is not available to both spouses. For instance, maybe a wife loves to play volleyball or work out or whatever the case, and the husband has no interest in that. Or maybe he's into camping and she hates being out in a sleeping bag out in the woods. Or my wife is a dancer by nature, but I never learned to dance. So there's that void, and every marriage has those. And then there's that last class is an old girlfriend, boyfriend, where you get in touch with somebody you dated in high school, a first love. One of my guys that I worked with actually went back to his 5th grade girlfriend. It's unbelievable because that first love is just so powerful. We just never, ever forget it.
And so with all of those, Dave, we had spoken last time about some attachment that's a root issue, but would you say for all of those scenarios, is there a different root issue with each type of affair?
No, I don't think so. I think they share a lot of similarity, except for class 3. I think they share a lot of similarity over this. That's a good question. I'd have to think some more about it, but my first reaction is, I think the class of infidelity you get involved in is the practice of the betrayal rather than a root, so to speak, a root issue, a root cause. I think they're all about attachment. And we say all affairs begin in infancy. But it's the practice of that, what you do over time trying to satisfy that, but it's an unsatisfactory effort that sets you up for this.
Well, and if we go back even to the beginning about the emotional affair or all of these different types of physical affairs, is there a different way that each one is initiated?
Well, I would say this. When Jesus was tempted in Matthew chapter 4 by the devil in that story, for those who are familiar with their Bible, Jesus resisted those temptations, even though they were quite severe. And then Matthew records this statement. The devil left him for a more opportune time. Now, that is a fabulous statement about temptation. Because many times the same person and the same experience and the same environment can come up in your life and you will have absolutely no inclination to get involved. But there are times when the same environment and person and everything, your resistance just collapses. Your boundaries just melt away. So I think it has more to do with environmental stressors and preparation. Now, some of that preparation might be personal, internal, like you're talking to yourself about your spouse, you're telling yourself she doesn't care for you anymore, it's always going to be like this, it's never going to get any better. So that some of that erosion might be taking place inside in your self-talk, but a lot of it, I think, has to do with your recent 2-year history, and I think a lot of it maybe has to do with how fragile you are and unaware of the fragility.
Oh, that is so interesting. Let's take a quick break to hear a message from our sponsor. Are you spending nights answering emails or juggling your calendar and just trying to keep up with your growing to-do list? When you're trying to balance leadership with family life, it's easy to feel stretched thin and constantly behind. I know I definitely relate to that. But you don't have to do it all. Belay matches busy leaders with US-based executive assistants to take administrative load off of your plate, so then you get to focus on what matters most. They do things from inbox management and scheduling to travel planning and task coordination. Your Belay EA will help you lead with clarity and live with more freedom. That has definitely been my story. My husband and I work with an amazing EA from Belay, and she is the reason why the Savvy Sauce can continue while I'm busy homeschooling and trying to invest in our family and outside relationships and things beyond just this podcast, but she makes sure all the administrative tasks are done. She's incredible. We've built a fun relationship, and I know you can do the same, and it can transform your life as well, because when you choose to delegate the details, you get your time back. You get your time for work, for your family, and for yourself. So if you're ready to reclaim your day, Belay has a special offer just for you. It is incredible. I'm going to keep it a surprise, but I want you to make sure you take action now, because this will change at the end of June 2025. So make sure you're claiming this offer today by texting the word SAVVY to 55123. That's SAVVY to 55123 to get back to what matters with Belay. You can also check out their website at belaysolutions.com. Thanks for your sponsorship. Will you describe some of the traits of someone considered to be a dangerous person to a marriage?
There are people out there who are more dangerous to you in your marriage than you probably give them credit for. Basically, there's a number of characteristics here that I've put in the book that I think help you kind of become more aware of some vulnerabilities. We all have vulnerabilities. All of us do. So sometimes there's we call it a developmental lag. Women will often talk about this kind of in a sarcastic way. I have 4 kids, for instance. 3 of them are under 10 and one's 35. So there's some reason why their husband never grew up. He's into toys or sports or act like he's just one of the kids or whatever. I have no idea what that means exactly, except that he's not as responsible as she needs him to be, or he maybe has always been a kid at heart because he never had a childhood. There's all kinds of reasons for that. But the lag is bothersome to her. And a personality style, well, all of us kind of get caught up sometimes in a different personality style than what we married. That's just the way it works. We maybe choose somebody who's safe for us, but they're also eventually over time kind of boring. You had a quick attachment because you both came from the same families, but you always wish you had married somebody more gregarious or outgoing, or somebody more studious, or somebody who valued aesthetics or philosophy or musical or whatever the case is. Okay, hobbies and interests are one where we sometimes get attached. I've had a number of clients start a relationship which actually became an affair because they shared a common interest with someone that they did not share with their spouse, and their spouse wasn't interested in that. So they found somebody that was, and over time they just began to kind of build that friendship into something that was very, very meaningful to them. This attachment pattern, your vulnerability, availability to be connected to the other person is really something learned, something driven because of where you come from. But maybe it's not what you really need, the kind of person you married. Family of origin, maybe you never had a dad in your family. And so you kind of marry a man who's maybe a little controlling or bossy. Control often feels like care initially if you've never had any sense of support along the journey. Sometimes moms are more interested in themselves, and so you never had a caring, comforting, loving, touching mom, and you always wanted somebody like that. So, and you didn't marry anybody, you married somebody just like her. Unfortunately, that's pretty common. There's that marital void we've talked about, like my wife and I with the dance thing, etc. A pursuit pattern. I talked to one of my clients one time, and I said to him, "Hey, Bill, why'd you do this?" And he said, "Dave," "let me tell you why I did this." Now, I got a hold of Bill. He was on an international call, a phone call. His wife came to see me. I called him on his cell phone. He was with a girlfriend in another country that he'd gone to go see. And she said, "You either come home and work on the marriage or I'm going to divorce." And so I called him and he came home, okay? And we got started. But the thing was, he said, all my life, I took care of everybody. I bought houses. I bought cars. I paid for schooling. I sent people on trips. Nobody ever did anything for me because I didn't need it. But I do need it. And I found this woman who just dotes on me. And it just shows you how much we all need that sense of attachment to somebody. Internal age. One of my clients, when I asked him how old he was 38 at the time. And I said, well, how old are you on the inside? And he says, after about a week, he came back to me and he said, he's 83. I said, how in the world did you get to be 83? Well, when I was born, my mom didn't want me, so my grandparents took me, and until the 5th grade, it's just me and Grandma and Grandpa. In the 5th grade, Grandpa died, and then it was just me and Grandma. Now, I was a pretty smart kid. I was doing well in school. Math and science were my favorites, and so my teacher started talking to me about maybe going to medical school. And however, in high school, Grandma started developing dementia, and we were so poor, we didn't have a car. We took public transportation everywhere, and I began to realize pretty quickly that I wasn't going to medical school. So I started looking for a geriatric nursing program in the area, and I found one. And by this time I graduated, Grandma was really getting bad. By the time I turned 18, I moved 2 more Alzheimer's patients into Grandma's home, and that's how I paid for college. By the time I got out of college, I started a number of boutique Alzheimer's homes. And I make way more money today than my physician wife would ever dream of making. But the other day, about 3 years ago, I started talking to some of my friends in the medical profession. And they started talking about cars and sporting experiences and dates they had and proms they went to. I grew up when I was 11 years old and Grandpa died. I never dated any other person in my entire life until I met my wife in my geriatric nursing program where she came through on a rotation. I never had a car until I graduated from college. I'd never played sports. And all of a sudden, I realized I had missed about 15 to 18 years of my childhood and young adult experience. And what I did, I know was wrong. But my point is, there's always a reason for it. There's always a cause or a justification. It's not a justification and an excuse, but there is something that drives people to do this when they break through their own boundaries and the behavior becomes ego dystonic. So that's the internal age thing. So a long story, but we talk about that profile. So finding out how those components play out in your marriage can be very helpful in creating a self-awareness that will become protective.
I was going to comment on this self-awareness. It seems like that is key. And so if we can try and make this more proactive, what would you recommend as some initial steps that someone should take if they start to encounter an attraction to someone outside their marriage?
Well, I say to all my groups, lectures, teaching I do, everybody in here will feel attracted to somebody other than their spouse. If you don't, you're either dead or in denial, because in this culture where males, females interact all the time, it's just going to happen. But it's what you do with that attraction that's going to preserve your marriage. And that is, you need to separate yourself right away. You just need to step out of the picture, stay away from them, not cultivate it. Because that's the temptation, because it becomes a mood alteration for you when you receive text from this person, when you see this person, you get a phone call from this person, your voice kind of elevates. Yeah, that's when you get in trouble.
And before we dive into more of the mood alteration, can you tell us about some different levels of protection?
First of all, based on your own deficiencies, your own shortcomings that you bring from the self-awareness, from your attachment, from your family of origin, from your personal experiences as a child, from the modeling you saw, etc., from the current stressors you've gone through in the last 2 years, all of that. that self-awareness is just huge. And I would tell you this is a very risky time for couples, because as families are forced together more, one or two things can happen. One, they can realize we need more of this, or the irritations that have settled in over the years of this marriage suddenly become highlighted, and they realize, I can't live with this person any longer. I mean, it kind of fractures in one or two directions. So if you think you've had a good time together, and you have a history that was positive that you shared, maybe before kids came or grandma moved in or something, well, then you need to go back and identify what were those things? What were those 8 greats or experiences that made it really good for you? Things that you stopped doing, the little rituals that you used to practice, but that the kids interfered with and you could no longer do. Rituals are a great measure of friendship. And the more of those you can build into your marriage, the better off. They can be little simple things. I take coffee to my wife every morning. I rarely miss a morning when I'm here at the house. And I'm here a lot anymore. So, and I have done that for 54 years. Now, it started because we were both working and she didn't like getting up in the morning and going to work. So I started taking coffee to her. There was an ulterior motive, but it became kind of a tradition that she really relished, and she loves doing it. In fact, I got all my kids out of bed that way. Once they started school, I start taking them hot chocolate. Then I put a little bit of instant coffee in the hot chocolate, and pretty soon it was half coffee and half chocolate. And they get up happier and alert. No fighting.
Oh, that's great to build rituals in, even daily ones.
Yeah.
Well, on top of rituals, in order to grow in marriage, what are some areas that couples can examine, especially ones that they may often avoid?
Well, one of the best things couples need to do is to learn how to show empathy. Not tell the spouse what to do or what they should do or how they should feel, but to show empathy. We all love empathy. Every affair demonstrates empathy, care, concern, how hard that must be for you. You are really good at this. People just don't appreciate you here in the office like they should. You're amazing. All that empathy. We need to get that from each other, people that we're safe with and aren't going to manipulate it to their own advantage. I often say the 3 A's are what's involved. Admiration is an attitude. Affirmation is the verbalization of it. Accommodation is the behavioral change that comes. So you begin to accommodate your schedule in order to get the affirmation that you need from this person who admires you. So those 3 A's are kind of a sequence of how affairs can begin very quickly. Now, in this process, you can extract yourself from it any time, but we often don't. And we often gravitate to the person who's given it to us, especially when we're not getting it, so to speak, this admiration, affirmation, accommodation from our spouse. One of my couples worked for an international company that was headquartered in France. And every year they had sales meetings, sales engineering meetings twice a year in Paris. But the wife would never go. The wife would never go. The company would fly them first class on Air France to Paris, put her up in a 5-star hotel, and why the husband was tied up in meetings for the week, and they would get 2 weekends on either side of the 5 meetings. She wouldn't go because she had small kids and she didn't think it was fair to leave them at home. Well, I told her, I said, if you don't go with him, there'll be somebody else who will go, especially in business class in a 5-star hotel. Don't miss this. I don't care what happens. So people just get locked into behaviors that are very self-destructive sometimes.
I want to make sure that you're up to date with our latest news. We have a new website. You can visit thesavvysauce.com and see all of the latest updates. You may remember Francie Heinrichsen from episode 132, where we talked about pursuing our God-given dreams. She is the amazing businesswoman who has carefully designed a brand new website for Savvy Sauce charities and we are thrilled with the final product, so I hope you check it out. There you're going to find all of our podcasts, now with show notes and transcriptions listed, a scrapbook of various previous guests, and an easy place to join our email list to receive monthly encouragement and questions to ask your loved ones so that you can have your own practical chats for intentional living. You will also be able to access our donation button or our mailing address for sending checks that are tax deductible so that you can support the work of Savvy Sauce Charities and help us continue to reach the nations with the good news of Jesus Christ. So make sure you visit thesavvysauce.com. On that note, you've done a lot of work with people who struggle with sexual addictions. So will you share the acronym HALT-B regarding the mood states that can be present when someone's at risk for a relapse?
HALT-B stands for this. And the sexual addict knows this. When I tell them this, they love this, okay? It stands for hungry, angry, lonely, tired, and bored, okay? HALT-B or HALT-B. These are mood states. And the more of these mood states that are present at any one time, like in an afternoon or an evening, the more likely a person is to break down their boundaries. If you're hungry, in the sense of the alcoholic being hungry, being empty, craving something, wanting something, feeling like something's missing, I need this, hungry. If you're angry or irritated or frustrated, the alcohol has initial sense of calming and settling you down. If you're lonely and feel all by yourself, alcoholics will call the bottle a woman because of the comfort it brings. So you're feeling alone. It'll help you think otherwise, even though you're more lonely than ever. When you're tired or exhausted or worn out or at the end of your rope and you don't have the resources to continue resisting temptation, or when you're bored and you're yearning for something to stimulate your thinking, something to fire up your imagination, something to distract you from the circumstances you find yourself in, that's HALT-B. It's not the bikini on the beach that tempts sex addicts the most. It's HALT-B. It's the mood states inside of you. So one of the things we really work at helping our sex addicts become more aware of is, what are you feeling right now? What are you feeling? What's going on inside of you right now? And it makes great fodder for a husband and wife to kind of check in like this, even on a daily basis, when they feel worn out or tired or weak. We all do at different times. No one's perfectly strong all the time.
And would you say, in addition to someone who identifies as an addict, would you say the general population that everyone is more vulnerable during these times of HALT-B?
Oh, yeah. Those are the boundary busters, those mood states. And the more of the mood states that are present, the more likely you are to act out or to relapse, as the case might be. That's true of all of us. That's why it's so hard, because you have to stay sober when you don't feel like staying sober. You have to say no when your body is screaming out yes for every reason in the book. So that's why you need a friend. That's why you need to be in a group. That's why you need to really work your program.
Well, and you write that many close calls or affairs stem from this desire for excitement or relief from boredom. So I'd love to change that into a question of, what are some ideas for couples to add excitement back into their relationship in a much healthier way?
Well, there's, I say, at least two different camps that you can build on. First of all, most of us married somebody we liked because we liked being with them. Now, that's not true of everybody, but it is true of most people. So you need to go back to your history and find out what you both used to like doing that you stopped doing because of all kinds of reasons. So you need to build some of those back into your life experience, even if they take some hard work to pull off, so to speak. it's amazing when you're dating and infatuating early on in the relationship. You'll do just about anything to make that person happy. And then the other thing is, what are some wishes or dreams or things you would have liked to have done? My wife and I early on made a kind of a conscious decision. We didn't think it'd have this kind of ramification, but we made a conscious decision to drive old cars and build expensive memories in their place. So, you can just pay $30,000 for a car, but what do you have in 6-8 years? You have an old car, okay? But if you spend $30,000 on a vacation and drive the old clunker for a while longer, what do you have in 6 or 8 years? You might have some really great stories that you can kind of lay in bed at night and talk about. You can sit down at the beach and reminisce on those memories. It's the memories that matter. And you'll have some bad experiences. Sometimes bad memories, they're the most powerful ones.
You're right. It's all stories, and it's a shared experience that I'm sure can bond you together.
Oh, that's what builds the bonding process, I mean, I can't imagine starting over after having a marriage as long as I've had my wife and the things we've done. There's not enough time left to build all those kinds of memories. And she's great at Shutterfly books and build all these books. And we look at this stuff and oh my gosh, remember that? So, yeah. So I think you need to do that. You need to consciously spend money on your marriage and really do it the way you want to do it. Build rituals, regular restaurants, meals, things you like to eat and drink, places you want to go, all that kind of stuff.
Well, and Dave, I think that you would be a great person to speak into maybe that young couple right now who does have young children at home. What would you like to encourage them about, even in this season, prioritizing their marriage?
Well, we had 4 kids spread over 10 years. My wife was a master's degree school principal working on a doctorate. I did 2 master's degrees myself, full-time job on the other therapy outside that. So we've always been extremely busy as a family. And we always had family vacations. We spent our last dime many times on family vacations, but we always also did stuff with each other. And sometimes you can't do as much with each other as you want to do, but you can always whisper to each other, I can't wait, babes, until we can get together. And you can keep the momentum, the affection going between the two of you. Because if I had my way, I'd rather be with you in some motel room or on some beach somewhere doing something like we would love to do. So part of it is anticipation. Anticipation is always better than the actual achievement of most memories. So we always try to keep those kinds of things going. Our kids talk about that all the time now. In fact, at our 50th wedding anniversary, they were telling stories. All of our friends were just howling. We were too. Stuff we'd even forgotten that they'd never have forgotten.
Oh, I think that's such an encouragement.
Yeah. If you let life just happen, it will happen and you'll go home empty. But if you try to interject things into life, or you'll try to carve out things from life, you'll just have a great experience, stuff to fall back on.
Well, you are just a wealth of wisdom. And so where can you direct people online to connect with you if they want to make an appointment or purchase one of your resources?
Well, you can go to candidly.com/Dave Carter and you can book an appointment. And it looks a little weird there, but you can do half hour, book it on the half hour or the hour. I charge $150 a session, a full session hour, whether you book on the half hour or the hour. You can go to restoreus.net, and the stuff I do with couples, working with them, trying to help them recover from sexual betrayal. That's in a series of videos. First 3 are free there at restoreus.net. I would strongly encourage you to go to lovelanguages.com. Gary's stuff. I love Gary Chapman's stuff on love languages. Furthermore, I'd encourage you to head over to the Yurkovich's howwelove.org, I think it is. Yurkovich's husband-wife team, really building on attachment theory, etc. I love Couple Talk by Don and Alex Flecky, which is a great training tool on how to provide empathy to you and your spouse. Do it in your own home, on video. I think it's the best couple communication thing out there, couple talk. So those are just some of the resources.
That's wonderful. We will definitely link to all of that in our show notes and resources tab. And Dave, you know that we're called the Savvy Sauce because savvy is synonymous with practical knowledge or discernment. And so as my final question for you today, what is your Savvy Sauce?
Focus on your spouse's strengths. We all have weaknesses, but we didn't marry our spouse because we needed another parent trying to finish raising us. So focus on your spouse's strength and watch out about your self-talk when you begin to focus on their shortcomings.
Oh, Dave, again, you have delicately handled a topic affecting so many people. I just want to say thank you for coming alongside so skillfully as you come alongside these couples who have experienced this. And so thank you for offering your balance of grace and truth. It was a privilege to get to host you as my returning guest today.
Well, thanks. I love doing this kind of stuff. I love marriages. I think Jesus does too.
One more thing before you go. Have you heard the term gospel before? It simply means good news, and I want to share the best news with you. But it starts with the bad news. Every single one of us were born sinners, but Christ desires to rescue us from our sin, which is something we cannot do for ourselves. This means there's absolutely no chance we can make it to heaven on our own. So for you and for me, it means we deserve death and we can never pay back the sacrifice we owe to be saved. We need a Savior. But God loved us so much, He made a way for His only Son to willingly die in our place as the perfect substitute. This gives us hope of life forever in right relationship with Him. That is good news. Jesus lived the perfect life we could never live and died in our place for our sin. This was God's plan to make a way to reconcile with us so that God can look at us and see Jesus. We can be covered and justified through the work Jesus finished if we choose to receive what He has done for us. Romans 10:9 says that if you confess with your mouth Jesus is Lord and believe in your heart that God raised Him from the dead, you will be saved. So would you pray with me now? Heavenly Father, thank you for sending Jesus to take our place. I pray someone today, right now, is touched and chooses to turn their life over to you. Will you clearly guide them and help them take their next step in faith to declare you as Lord of their life? We trust you to work and change lives now for eternity. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. If you prayed that prayer, you are declaring Him for me, so me for Him. You get the opportunity to live your life for Him. And at this podcast, we're called the Savvy Sauce for a reason. We want to give you practical tools to implement the knowledge you have learned. So you ready to get started? First, tell someone. Say it out loud. Get a Bible. The first day I made this decision, my parents took me to Barnes & Noble and let me choose my own Bible. I selected the Quest NIV Bible and I love it. You can start by reading the book of John. Also, get connected locally, which just means tell someone who's a part of a church in your community that you made a decision to follow Christ. I'm assuming they will be thrilled to talk with you about further steps, such as going to church and getting connected to other believers to encourage you. We want to celebrate with you too, so feel free to leave a comment for us here if you did make a decision to follow Christ. We also have show notes included where you can read scripture that describes this process. And finally, be encouraged. Luke 15:10 says, "In the same way, I tell you, there is rejoicing in the presence of the angels of God over one sinner who repents." The heavens are praising with you for your decision today. And if you've already received this good news, I pray you have someone to share it with. You are loved, and I look forward to meeting you here next time.